When's the last time you saw a warrant that wasn't a no-knock warrant? I'm just asking
Good
because
question.
I don't know that I've ever seen a warrant that's not a no-knock warrant.
We are the armed attorneys. Today we're talking about some bad behavior by the ATF. This guy's on life support. We'll talk about that case in just a little bit, but the lead up to and things you need to understand about search warrants, no knock warrants, how the ATF gets these things, when they do things wrong, what's the recourse. But before we begin, show your support for the Second Amendment by hitting that like button. And this is a wild and upsetting case.
It is. So what we have is Brian Malinowski, who was actually the head of security at the Little Rock Airport, purportedly upstanding gentleman, good salary, nice neighborhood, a collector of guns as far as what his brother is saying, but no reason to believe this man is a hardened criminal. But I will say news will come out fast and furious. So we'll see sort of where this goes from here. But what happened was the ATF served a warrant, what's purportedly a search warrant, on his home at about 6 in the morning. A shootout ensues. And again, we have very little information about how this started or what happened. But what we know is that Mr. Malinowski suffered a brain injury, is on life support, is effectively brain dead, and basically they're just arguing over his body for organ donation at this point.
Yeah, this is some top tier piece of behavior. The ATF appears to be interfering with the family's ability to
Donate his
donate
organs.
his organs, which is
Awful.
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 Yeah, I can't even imagine, but it raised a bunch of questions that we've gotten from folks with regard to search warrants, different types of warrants, how we get these things, um, there's some kind of better and best practices. We can maybe talk about that a little bit. And when the ATF or the state government gets these things wrong, what's your legal recourse? But to start things off, there's two big different types of categories of warrants we have. We have search warrants, which are court orders to inspect a place for potentially evidence of a crime, and seizure warrants. Usually you have a search and seizure warrant. It says, "Hey, there's this thing in this location. Go get it." And then you have arrest warrants. Those are saying, "Hey,
Seizure of the
yeah,
person,
seizure of the
right?
person." And so this search warrant, this is the court saying, I believe probable cause exists that a crime occurred. I believe that there's evidence of that crime in this location. Go forth, law enforcement, and get that evidence. And search warrants, they're dangerous business.
They are, for a number of reasons. They tend to be executed at times that are scary. Number one, I mean, you see them executed at all hours of the day and night. And we also have this fun little thing that all governments like to employ called no knock warrants. There have been lots of state level efforts to dispense with the no knock warrant. It would be lovely if we could because no knock warrants cause a lot of shootouts.
Yeah, and there's
What do you do? Like if someone knocks on my door or busts down my door at 4 in the morning, what are you gonna do?
yeah, I know I've had that scenario. I'm sure y'all have thought about this scenario. You probably have a firearm within arm's reach next to you while you're
Mhm.
sleeping. Some you have no reason to know what's going on. Door blows down and person's, shadowy figure standing in hallway inside of your house. What are you supposed to do?
Yes. And unfortunately, unless you happen to live in a state that has outlawed no knock warrants, which probably are some, and I can't think of any off the top of my head, this is something that you are absolutely subject to. So, how do we get a warrant?
So we have law enforcement petitioning a court saying, "Hey, we believe that a crime occurred." They have to be able to, based on their personal knowledge that's reasonable and trustworthy, be able to articulate to the court what that crime is,
Mhm.
that there's evidence of that crime, and where that evidence may be located. And so, in most courts, will say, "Hey, you have to have this. This stuff has to be." And I'll say the scenario that most comes up most frequently, and so this is probably a good way to illustrate it, is like a drug buy, right? They send in a confidential informant to buy drugs inside of a house. The court says, if I'm going to give you a warrant, you have to execute it fairly quickly. I'm not going to let you sit on this warrant for a year. And so it all has to be done kind of contemporaneously. It has to be kind of in fresh pursuit of this evidence.
Right. So, what we have is a neutral magistrate finding probable cause that there is, in fact, evidence of a criminal offense within a certain location, and then law enforcement must execute that warrant, varies state by state, but law enforcement must execute that warrant within a certain period of time. I mean,
And I think we can read between the lines a little bit here. It's the
it's
ATF.
the ATF. So, like, best case scenario for the ATF, this guy is like running an illegal firearms sale business, right? I mean, we're not talking about someone who's like sex trafficking a bunch of human beings in his home,
Sure,
right?
that would have been the FBI.
You know, so worst case scenario, like, I don't know, he bought a couple FRTs.
Yeah, this
I
is
mean,
and again,
really, I mean, that's
this
what's
is wild. This is
scary.
speculation
We
mode,
are
but
we are speculating wildly,
and
but
we'll
we've been doing it all morning.
yeah, and so we'll get more details on it as this case, and we'll follow this case and keep y'all
Yes.
updated, but, um, it's gonna be theoretically gun crime.
Yes. But again, just looking at the human being here and making our best guess based on all purported knowledge we have about Mr. Malinowski, I just can't imagine this is something that he needed to die over. And so we will see what happens. But um, what can we do about it?
Yeah, well
Assuming this is an ATF screw up.
sure, and so I think we just talking about the no-knock thing, legislative, get with your legislators. We need to get rid of no-knock
Yes.
warrants, and haven't seen any reporting that this is what happened here, but it's again, reading between the lines, investigating gun crime. That's one of those grounds where courts usually grant no-knock warrants, because of the heightened dangerousness to law enforcement. The other ones, you see no-knock warrants come up with spoliation of evidence.
When's the last time you saw a warrant that wasn't a no knock warrant? I'm just asking.
Good
Because
question.
I don't know that I've ever seen a warrant that's not a no-knock warrant.
Um,
I haven't practiced in a while.
I'd say, the county that I prosecuted in, it was about 50-50.
Really? Because I
Yeah.
prosecuted in that county too, and I never saw a no anything but a no-knock, but
Well,
okay.
when I was in intake, I was doing all the warrants, so it really isn't.
Really?
Yeah, it's
I
like
just I just saw them, of course, my cases, but
yeah, but no knocks, very, very dangerous. We're not the tactics folks. How do you deal with people kicking down your door in the middle of the night? Ugh. And what do state laws say about using deadly force against law enforcement? Double because most states have like a strict hardline prohibition on that.
mhm.
And
So,
so, but going on to the what are your remedies? We have two, I would say three interesting, possible courses of action here. And it all depends on who's involved. We got state level actors, we got federal actors acting negligently, and then federal actors who are acting intentionally. And they all kind of have different remedies.
yes. So, if you're on the state level, you've got your 1983 claim. We're actually not gonna dig too deep into that because we're talking about potentially the ATF here and how you would go after the ATF for a violation of your rights. So, the first way is by the Federal Tort Claims Act.
Yeah, man. They provide a form available to you. This is saying, hey, government actor acted negligently, caused damages, and there's some kind of causal nexus between this person acting within the scope of their duties and the damages. The federal government has set up a system to make claims.
Yes, they have. It has to be against a federal actor who's working in the course and scope of his federal duties. But the biggie, the biggie is it has to be negligent,
Yeah.
right? So anyone who is a federal actor who has done an intentional act, let's say by intentionally pulling the trigger of his firearm, that's not negligent.
Yeah. I mean,
I mean, if an ATF agent negligently discharges and hits you in the hip,
yeah.
maybe.
When I think negligence, I think UPS or USPS truck driver texting and driving crashes into someone.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't think shootout.
Warrant execution, yes. So, that is one way to recover against the federal government. And remember, your ways are limited because of this thing we call sovereign immunity or qualified immunity.
Yeah, the government has to agree to be sued.
Exactly. So, and I suppose in some ways you understand it because if we could just sue the government all the time, people would be doing it all the time, and the government would have no time and no money to actually govern. So you want to limit it to meritorious suits. Unfortunately, what happens is that lots of things that are meritorious are also limited out.
Yeah, so Emily mentioned that Section 1983 claim. That's our deprivation of rights claims against state
Hmm.
actors. But there is actually a completely different process on the federal level.
Yes. So there is a statute about how you can sue your state government for violating your rights. No such statute on the federal level. However, we do have a judicially created remedy, an implied right. I mean, it comes from a little case called it's like Bivens v. Six unknown law
Federal,
enforcement
yeah,
agents.
federal
Yeah.
agents or something like that. Yes.
So under Bivens, you get to have sort of the equivalent of your 1983 claim, but against federal agents, not a federal body as a whole. You can't do a Bivens against the ATF, but it would have to
Right.
be against the actor who actually violated your constitutional rights. My understanding is that Bivens claims are extraordinarily hard to win.
Yeah. So it's again very similar elements to a 1983 claim. Federal actor, right deprived, damage, causal connection between those things. I think we all have a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It seems like Mr. Malinowski might have been deprived of that.
Absolutely. But, it's going to be tough. Let's say that law enforcement on scene says, well, he came out with a gun in his hand, which, again, you could understand potentially why that might happen. He came out with a gun raised. He blah, blah, blah. That is probably going to knock out a Bivens claim because they're going to say that officer didn't deprive him of rights. That officer was using, justified self defense.
Sure.
So, we'll see. We'll see. Again, there is lots of information we don't have here, but it is worth talking about and worth bringing light to federal bodies, particularly the ATF. I mean, potentially committing abuses against the public.
Yeah. But upsetting as it is, we hope you enjoyed this discussion. If you did, consider subscribing, hitting that like button, and help us fight the anti 2A algorithm by sharing this video.
And please question and comment for us below. As always, until next time, we're the armed attorneys.